The following story, again, as I said, I'm going to leave it without commentary, as even how this happened and what happened in the Rebbe's office, between the Rebbe and what we can learn from it. I'm just going to share the story. My father was a business man. He sold and bought rare stamps. He acquired stamps for collectors. At some point, he printed stamps. He did a lot on his own. Sometimes he worked with Mr. Melamed, Sam Melamed, Zalzain Gesund, and so on. Many years, my father had a good parnasa, Baruch Hashem, and many years the parnasa was very irregular. It was dependent on a lot of things. Many times, his parnasa could go down by 2/3, and there was a real dechik. There were times that I remember my father, especially during times of dechik, where he would sit hours every night, or 2 or 3 times a week, and he would have envelopes that were already stamped. Not either envelopes that were stamped from our house, but then he also had a bunch of just the corners of the envelope, not the envelope. It doesn't say who got it and who sent it, but the stamp and the postal stamp and the stamp from the post office on top of it. My father would get that with a piece of the envelope, and he would soak thousands of these in a shissel, like a negelvasa shissel, with soap water, warm soap water. He would put in, like, I don't know, a couple of hundred in this shissel, and a couple hundred. He might have done, I don't know, 1,000 a night. And then he would leave it overnight. And then in the morning or later, after a while that it's soaked, he could remove the stamp from the envelope. He would put them down on, we used to get the New York Times that used to spread out newspapers, put them down on newspapers, and when they dried, he would collect it. It was something that he spent a lot of time on. So I asked my father once, what is he doing? So he told me he gets a couple of cents for each stamp, and he has a ribu stamps here. So I said, so does that add up? He says, look, it's a lot of work, but it does add up. And he says that the way he has a ribu stamps is because basically almost everything he's doing, he's getting from Merkez. And Rabbi Chodakov came to him with a suggestion that a way he can help Merkez is, if they bring him all the stamps, and he knows how to do this thing with the stamps, and he gets, maybe it was a couple of cents per stamp, maybe 1 cent per stamp, but it was a lot of stamps. He could have done 1,000 a night. And that way, and he gives half, he should go do everything and sell it wherever you sell it, keep half for himself and give half to Americans, and in that way, so my father, so that's Rabbi Chodakov's idea, and my father said, so I'm doing it because it's also helping Americans, it's bringing some money to Americans they otherwise wouldn't have. And it's not a lot, but if you do it a few times a week and it adds up, it could be, a couple $1,000s a month or whatever. If I remember correctly, my father once told me that it's especially, I'm especially appreciative because this year I couldn't help as much as past years in America, so this way I could help Americans a little more. Okay, my father did this for years, and not always regular. I remember certainly at the beginning of the '80s a couple of times, and then maybe later. All right, I forgot about all of this. About 12 years ago, a relative comes to me and he says, I need to ask you something. I got hold of the full testimony, not a testimony, the full, I forgot what it's called, the full transcript of Binyamin Klein. Maybe he saw the video or the transcript of what Binyamin Klein shared with Jem. It's a few hours. Okay. He says, there's something there I didn't understand. Binyamin Klein says he once walked into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe is sitting with his foot on the chair and opening envelopes. Now, the Rebbe, every second was precious. We know the way the Rebbe opened envelopes. Mamish every second to get letters. He wasn't sitting in his normal position. He's sitting like with the foot on a chair with a box, opening the envelopes from the desk, and tearing off of each envelope. There was a bunch of envelopes that maybe the Rebbe just opened. The Rebbe's tearing off the corner with the stamp with a little bit of the envelope and putting it in the box. And that takes a second for each one, a couple of seconds. So he was just looking at what the Rebbe is doing because it takes some time. And by the Rebbe, the greatest, the most precious thing besides the Yid was a second. So he was looking at the Rebbe and was just like wondering. And the Rebbe looked at him and said, this helps Yitzchak Nemes with Parnasa. He could sell these and it helps him with Parnasa. So that's what he's doing. What my father did is butter. I saw it 100 times. My conversation with my father was, I'm remembering from 40 years ago, And at that time, I didn't realize that we were even dealing with the story from the Rebbe. That only came out like 12 years ago or something. The other part is, the new part from 12 years ago is something that I did not see Rabbi Klein's, what he gave over to Jen. So I'm basing it on secondhand what I heard from someone else, but that person was just Masich Lefitume. He doesn't know about any of this. I'm going to assume that the Rebbe, that for the many months, and I think years that my father did this, that the Rebbe wasn't the one. Eventually they worked out a system where when the envelopes came back, somebody tore off the corners. However, Rabbi Chodikov worked it out. But the point is, even if it happened just once or twice, it's whatever. L'chaim.